Rana Ranita Roja. Good. Hello. I was going to say good morning, but like, man, it is afternoon.
It's definitely not morning.
Mere mortals, for those out there, if it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening, bonsoir, bonne nuit, whatever it may be, we are the Mere Mortals. Juan here.
Karen here as well.
And we are the Mere Mortals, the Mere Mortals podcast.
And you are the Mere Mortal listeners.
The Mere Mortal
You're
listeners.
also
Indeed.
a Mere Mortal. Don't forget about you.
The Mere Mortalites.
Mere Mortalites.
The Mere Mortalites. I want to talk about keeping your edge today. How to keep your edge.
Okay.
So I recently, it was a recent podcast, listened to one from the Art of Manliness. It was called
which we
How
forgot.
to Keep Your Edge as You Get Older.
We forgot to do it as homework, so stop the video right
That's
now.
true.
Listen to it.
Go back, go check it out. It's like 40 minutes. Although I didn't even know we were going to talk about that in the previous one.
Yeah.
So that's my fault. That's my fault.
Definitely your fault.
Although I think it came out after the podcast we even recorded.
Yeah, that's absolutely not an excuse.
Yeah, not an excuse. So, yep, pause it right now. Go check out the Art of Manliness. I think that guy's podcast has been going for like 10 years.
Yeah, he's been at it for a while, eh?
He's a good man, and I like the way he does the interviews. But anyways, he had a particular conversation on that podcast about how to keep the edge. And I can't even recall who the guy he was talking to. He was a French dude.
You didn't write
I didn't write that down.
Oh,
It wasn't an important point for me to get.
It was like Verdier something.
But the context of the...
What number was the episode?
Didn't even write that down either.
Eight.
Didn't write that down either. Well, but what I did write down, it's how to keep your edge as you get older.
Yeah.
By the Art of Manliness. So if you search that up on the brand new Spotify, you'll find it. We'll put the details in the notes, so check out the notes. But in this particular conversation, right, it was about how to keep your edge as you get older. So it was a whole conversation of older, and it was physical, sleeping, mental, right? But what came to me straight away, I was listening to this and I'm like, yes, I agree with all this. And I've got a particular view about maybe keeping your edge that is maybe different to some of the other mere mortals out there. But I wanted to ask you the first question out of this. Is it like, should we even bother keeping our edge? Like if I say it to you, should you keep your edge as you grow older? Is that something that you go, yeah, I would do that?
Yeah, well, see, this is what I got stuck on immediately, which was the sort of definition. So normally I was looking up definition. How are you going to, is it going to be keeping? Is it going to be is it going to be edge? And I actually just went with the losing your edge. So most people actually talk about losing your edge, not keeping it. And
losing your edge.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you type, keeping your edge in Google, not much comes up.
Yep.
If you type in losing your edge, a lot more comes up. So it seems to be more of a, not a preventative thing in like a negative way. The glass is half empty, not half full. Sort of like, oh shit, I'm losing it. So
I prefer looking at it how to keep your edge. That's like the most positive look at it.
I'm just saying this is what appears. So the losing your edge is when you no longer have the special skills, qualities, advantages of the past. So pretty easy definition there. So for me, that implied two things. One, that you first of all have an edge.
Well, that's true.
And then the second is that you want to keep it.
Yes.
So the having an edge was, I suppose, the most important thing. Like, what are actually my edges if I was going to dive into this with you?
Yep.
What are my edges?
Well, even at that beginning, so even at that point of edges, and just to clarify to the folks, there's no number to his podcast.
No,
it is just how to keep your edge as you get older. That's why I wrote that.
Well done.
But with
out.
the whole about the edge, right? How to keep your edge. Would you even say that that's something that you have so that you have to lose or to try to keep? Like, do you even consider that as my edge right now is my ability to do whatever to try and keep in the long term? Do you even see it that way at all?
Yeah, so that was the thing. So it's, a special skill, a quality or advantage that you have, and that's something that you want to keep. And so, well, I guess for me, the immediately thing that jumps to mind is talent doesn't play a part in that. If you're naturally good at, you got perfect pitch when you're singing, for example, that helps a shit ton, but that's not something you can keep or lose. It's just something you have. So, I'm guessing this is talking more about skills that you have acquired through laborious hard work. I'm not. Is that what you would go down in this sort of conversation?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's just innate things that you're just born with. Like to say, if you're 7'3" and you're a really good basketball player, it's not like, oh, I want to make sure I keep my edge of being 7'3". Like, okay, maybe you'll reduce by an inch with gravity compressing your spine, but it's not like you're going to alter that altogether too much.
Actually, no. Even just saying that though, so. Some of the things I wrote down from what are my edges. So what are some things that I would want to keep? This is the question you asked me. So intelligence. And what I mean by that is the ability to think. So not necessarily the, whatever, like however you just define intelligence that Einstein have, which is probably, the ability to form really complex, unrelated links and put them all together into a coherent manner.
Mm-hmm. I would just say problem solving. I would say that's to be problem solving.
I suppose so. Yeah, we'll go with that. Energy is something I would want to keep.
Okay.
My sanity, that's definitely something I want to try and keep.
Okay, yeah.
I'd say joviality, so not taking life too seriously, and then maybe just general body movement. And so when I think about that, none of those are really things that I've particularly worked super hard on to get. It's sort of like a mixture of I naturally just got there. Maybe I did a little bit of work, and then some of that's just innate as well. So even just talking about that now, my own thinking goes against what I was saying, which was it needs to be a hard worked, a thing that
it can be a combination of
point. But that does definitely play a part, because if you hear about people losing their edge, the top athlete or whatever, that's usually the context for it. Oh, they've lost their edge. It's usually that skill they've developed.
Yeah, although I would say even in that case, it is a mixture of maybe some innate talent and a skill that they've developed. I'm thinking Usain Bolt, if he continued running and he slows down and maybe you say he's lost his edge, maybe there's a combination of he's just atrophied in terms of his muscular endurance and strength, and maybe he's lost a little bit of a skill. Yeah. So both of them have maybe contributed to calling it, oh, you've lost your edge. But it's like, there's more, okay, I like those points. I wanted to delve into very similar ones, because in the podcast, he talked about how to keep your edge. And there was things like sleep, seeds, I think it was, sleeping, eating, exercise, getting sunlight. I think I've got them written down as well. Yeah. But rather than, so I like that. And I was like, okay, cool. We can talk about those. But I more wanted to focus in more for the mere mortals is like, okay, because I agree with some of those ones that you mentioned. It's like intellect. Yep. Joviality. Yep. Or in different words. Exercising. Yep. How would you say today for intellect, how would you be trying to keep your edge? So do you think that you've gone already past your prime of intellect, or do you think that's something that is going to be pretty easy to continue to progress? So do you think that maybe keeping your edge in intellect is going to be an easy thing? And would you say there'd be anything that you'd actually try to do to keep it as well?
Yeah. Look, on my sort of current trajectory, which is, doing the things that I love to do, I don't see any problem with that. So, learning a language, bloody freaking difficult. That one's right up there. Obviously, I read shit tons of books. Even just the podcast is a sort of way of problem solving in essence, because it's, trying to build it and make it bigger, and also better. So quality and quantity wise. So, there's plenty of things involved with that. Even just conversating can...
Conversing?
I like conversating. That sounds better. Okay. No, conversing is definitely the right word. I just like conversating.
You like conversating. Cool. Dang, okay.
So would I say I've passed my peak? Probably not. I would say most people... I actually don't even know how you would define that. Well, I think if you just use IQ, I believe you actually start going down when you're getting into your 30s.
No, see, this is the definition of what I was intrigued that they didn't touch on this conversation, maybe more specifically on a lot of these topics, was, okay, like let's say intelligence, or you can call it maybe problem solving skills, or the capacity to, learn or rote memory, whatever. So I have heard, and I'm just going to throw random numbers here, but I have heard that people say, when you're 25 or you're 28 years old, beyond that, you're basically losing more neurons that you're pretty much generating. But I have heard the whole like, oh yeah, you peak out in IQ capabilities into your 30s basically, and then you start to decline. So whether it's in your mid 20s to sort of late 30s or mid 30s, I'm just going to say broadly it's kind of like, oh, you've gone up to that point. And I would say similarly, like for myself, I'm not reading as much books as you, but I may be doing different things. I may be trying to learn from different areas. Now, let's imagine you move into your 35s, 40s. Do you think you'd have to change anything if you obviously continue in the trajectory of what you're doing today? Would you do anything additional to keep your intellect? Do you think like, let's go 45 years old. So it's an assured thing that you're in a position where, okay, you now, by biological standards, you're on the way down with physically what your mind might be able to do, just mentally, your capacity, your neurons to fire. Would you imagine yourself change your course to try to keep that intellect?
Well, if there was something that was proven to work, I probably would, but I don't know of anything out there really that would say,
this is what you have to do.
This is what you should do to keep your brain active. Most of those sort of articles are just bullshit, general advice related more to actually you're getting your body out and moving. Because when your body sort of is stuck in a rut, then your mind tends to follow as well. So no, I wouldn't say there was any particular thoughts. I've always had a laugh at those, those brain training games. Like, you make yourself smarter using these,
play Sudoku play 3 Sudokus daily and you'll become smarter by 2 IQ points every day.
Or there's, particular apps, particular websites which claim to, enhance neuroplasticity and plasticity and all these things. And they're just games. Like I don't, as far as I'm aware, none of the research is showing that these things are actually making you smarter playing them. You just get good at playing this game.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's that, but even to the point that, okay, let's say that it does improve your neuroplasticity. I did recently listen to a podcast about how, and it was a study that they did like 6 years ago, and then they rechecked it again like very recently. And it was basically like, playing games, like just a very random game that they selected to play. It wasn't a specific numbers, puzzles kind of thing. It was just almost like a GTA 5 Grand Theft Auto style of game. And they just played it for a very specific time, got them to learn. And then 6 years later, they actually found they got improved neuroplasticity and all this other stuff from just playing this random game. Yeah. So it's kind of like you might just get that anyways.
Yeah. Well, maybe playing the games is the important part and not as, this special app game on your, phone, which you have to pay X amount to subscribe to and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. What about you? Do you think there's anything you'd...
Well, I'm all... so I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay. If I wanted to keep my edge as I got older, so imagining myself, I want to keep on reading. But I kind of thought of lots of things. Reading, okay. Languages, okay. Talking to people, okay. Networking, okay. What it got me down to is, I think this is probably one of the aspects of life where keeping edge and intellect is probably the easiest in terms of this broader spectrum. And I want to get your thoughts on when we talk about some of the others, because there's just so many different ways to keep that. Like you would have to actively, like, let's just say us. If you're a mere mortal who is tracking goals, who is reading, who's trying to keep up to date, who's chasing things, I would find it like you'd have to actively do something to kind of lose that edge on your intelligence. Even if you deteriorate.
No, I wouldn't agree with that because, one of the things that I would say actually just jumped out of me from this was, so the podcast was particular to men, particular to what's his name, Verdier or whatever, was for men over 40 and them becoming, do you remember what their description was? It was like soft, that was like SSDS or something like that. Anywho, so I'm not sure I'd particularly agree with that because what if I just said to you, you have half the amount of energy that you do right now? What would be losing your edge in terms of there? Like, would you be able to handle all the stuff that you were just talking about then? So I'd say, just imagine you lose half your energy. I think everything would take a hit. I wouldn't say your intellect is, or your intelligence, or whatever it is that we're particularly talking about here. I wouldn't say that's something that just goes. It's like, well, you've halved the amount of stuff of everything.
Yeah, maybe I would term it then on a different way. Maybe I'd say that the aspect of intelligence and losing it might be the more robust thing if you've already got well-established sets of ways that you're learning already in younger life. So if you've already set into play ways when you're younger in the period of building that intelligence, maybe that intelligence holds its edge or its robustness into the future. If you had to halve your energy for everything, I think that would hold more robustly than like physical abilities to me. And yes, it's hard to compare that, very hard to compare, but I can imagine if you halve the energy, it would still be possible for me to have relevant conversations about random topics, where there might be nuclear energy and just checking up on like a couple of things to kind of get an idea and then having a conversation, versus me being able to be like, no, I just cannot do a muscle up. Like, no, that's just not happening. Just like there is an impossibility there because I just don't have the energy for it. So that's kind of maybe how I pictured that.
Okay. Yeah.
So then the other one, so we're talking about it. So physically, so keeping your edge physically, what would you say? Because I would say straight out that and it's similar to my minimal moment, but basically when it comes to physical stuff, I can already see myself. I basically bound like I'm between doing very rational type of workouts, not often, but sometimes, and like insanity, and like going well beyond what you should be doing on a daily basis for working out. And I can see that if I could continue that for, let's say, forever, like for years and years and years, then it's not like I'm going to lose the edge. I'm going to just like fall off the deep end because it's just going to be way too much and the body's not going to be able to handle it. The only reason I can do that now is the body's able to handle it. So for me to keep my edge physically, I can already see that at some point, and I'm like, oh, I'm scared about wanting to do this, but I'm going to have to make the call on, no, I need to take away from how much I am doing and be more specific on maybe longevity training. And when I say that, it's maybe less focus on pure building of the muscles or pure strength, and it's more around functional movement, functional joints, etc.
Yeah.
How would you see that?
So he was talking a lot of it about being a physical polymath. So I actually quite like that idea, which was just being able to get good, but not great at a lot of things. And I think this is just sort of my general philosophy in life. So of course I'm going to latch onto it and be like, oh yeah, I love this.
I love this. Yeah.
But I did like that aspect of, being able to climb a tree, being able to walk a long distance, being able to run a short distance, being able to swim X kilometers or whatever. And I quite like that. So the physical aspect for me, I would say is, what is it where you can, because when you think of like, if you just take physical exercise, it's hard to pin down, when you would actually expect to lose your peak. So for soccer players, it's usually around 27 years old. That's where they're at the peak. Gymnasts, I'm pretty sure it's a bit younger than that, depending on the type of gymnastics. So,
and you always see them being like, 16 years old, already like top of the world or something like that. They're like reaching the potential at that age.
Yeah. Golfers, their peak is probably later into their like 40s and 50s.
Yep.
So it depends on what exercise it is that you're actually doing. So, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts?
Well, the other one that I had was, and I was just making sure I got that name right, when I read Range by David Epstein, and the whole conversation of, how some people almost in that polymath view of, if you do a lot of things, you actually ultimately could get really good at one particular thing. And I sort of see it just broadly like that as well, in the sense of, I think I came from a very structured, I'm just going to do lifting, right? And if I just looked at lifting and I continue to do lifting, I think the edge when it comes to my physical abilities is going to be really limited, and I'm also going to lose that really quickly.
What is it for lifters, like in general? Like a power lifter, for example?
When you say that, do you mean, like when would be like the top end?
Yeah. When do they...
I'd probably have to guess around like mid-30s. Okay. Mid-30s, because you do get some, like, where you hear like old dad strength or dad strength. You do get quite strong later into the years. And like, I'm just focusing on like the top lifters of today that I sort of see, like Dan Powell and a couple of others, they'd be 34, 35, and they're really hitting like their real peaks. Yeah, and it's also because you have to go through all the cycles of your training. So, you might do a 12-week training cycle to get to a particular peak, and then you reach it, and you do another 12 weeks. And because of that sort of secular training style, it takes 5 years just to be able to get to like a really, really top peak, purely because you're turning up the technique and the tendons and the muscles and that. So it does take a bit later. But if you just focus on, say, that one linear move, I could imagine that keeping your edge, and at least when I say keeping your edge, I also think about it more what you think of it as opposed to the comparison to the broader world. Because you could easily be, let's just take an instance, a pure powerlifter. If they're powerlifted from like 16 years old to 35 years old, you're going to be hella strong. And then let's say at 55 years old, comparatively to the world, you're going to be hella strong still. Like, you're going to be so strong.
Yeah.
But I think personally, you yourself would look at it and go, I've lost my edge. I don't have my edge because I used to do this. And so I think having that singular view of your training will undoubtedly feel like you'll lose your edge. And even if you think like, I can move my training in this way, no matter what, it is going to go down. But broadening it when it gets to that point, I'm going to say, like, personally, I would say, okay, once I get to 35 years old, I would want to be really branching out in different types of training. And that could be all the way out to, say, yoga flexibility, a little bit of CrossFit, a little bit of powerlifting, a little bit of swimming, a little bit of running, a broad spectrum. Because as you say, touching a lot of those different things broadly, I think I could have a better chance of getting slowly better at all of them progressively for a long time than reaching my absolute peak with one of them and never being able to get there again. And like that's a definite mental way that I'll be like, I'll lose the edge for sure. There's nothing I can do about it. Where the opposite of, okay, I'm going to get to a point where I can just keep going and this might go to, my lifting might never go much better, but it'll still be like, if I reach 80% of my genetic limit, I might be able to tailor it down to 70% as I get older. Cool, that's fine. But maybe my swimming will improve. Running can continue to improve. Other things can improve. And I think mentally, I would at least personally look at it and go, okay, I still feel like I've got it. But I looked at it just linear, like singularly to one training, I'd say, nah, I've lost it.
Yeah, so that's what he was talking about with the physical polymath stuff. And is that something you want to do though, or you're being forced into it?
No, I think I definitely want to do it. Yeah. And I can tell as I'm maturing with my training, and so it's like 12 years into sort of gym training, I guess, that I can see that evolution starting to happen. I recall happening maybe 3 years ago where I started thinking, okay, I want to train slightly different, because I would just be going in and doing the usual like chest and biceps, back and triceps, or the opposite way around, legs, and then decided shifting a little bit into, okay, I want to do more powerlifting, and then shifted again maybe a year ago to, okay, let's try Olympic lifting. And now it's, I want to kind of get back into swimming. Not that I totally love running. I don't want to do long distance running, but I'm okay with short distance running. That's okay. Like short distance here is 1K to 2K, folks. Don't get excited. And I'm enjoying doing CrossFit training. I'm enjoying still doing powerlifting or some Olympic lifting, normal bodybuilding movements. And I could see that trend continuing for me.
Yeah, okay.
For you though, and I was going to ask you this question when it comes to that physical polymath. So currently you're doing the running based on the marathon running that we want to be doing. But you, apart from that, train basically outdoor bars and handstands as well, and potentially rings. Do you see yourself becoming a little bit more of like a fitness, poly-fitness person of doing different things where it's maybe different sports or something like that?
Probably not sports in general. I'd like the ability to maintain, I guess, to be able to come across random people doing anything and be able to play with it. So if they're playing volleyball, I'd love to be able to just go over and, be able to play volleyball and not be either physically incapable or not have the pathways in my head to, flick the wrist and hit the badminton, shuttlecock, whatever. So I'd like to, definitely I would say just keep a general well-roundedness. So the ability to do anything at basically any time. And I'm not going to be the best at it.
No.
But I don't want to ever have to, look at, and I'm talking up into like the age of, let's just say 60-ish. Because after that, I think, other things can go. Sure. But I'd love to, just be able to say, yep, there's that thing that's going on. Oh, okay, I can participate that. Yeah, cool. So would I actually need to work on that? I think I sort of am gravitating towards things anyway. Like I've been thinking a lot about dancing recently and maybe making that like a big term goal for me next year.
Yep, you're
getting into that. So yeah, I think for me, it's honestly, this whole subject is not anything I've particularly like. This is probably the first time.
The reason I brought up this topic was because I listened to him talk. I kind of had some conflicting thoughts about it. Try to map it back to some of the things that I was thinking of, and I was like, there's a couple of thoughts here that I haven't even personally looked into. So like, prime example, physical stuff. One of my annual goals this year, it's subsets, like 2, but one is achieve top 20%, pretty much fitness stats that I created when you compare it across the broad range spectrum of what I should be compared against. And then there's like an extra additional goal to reach 10%. And so to spell it out another way, that's like, okay, I want to be able to achieve, if you could rank it, a top 20% squat and deadlift and bench press and swim and run and squat and overhead squat and snatch, all these sort of different things in a way to be able to say, I am more than adept right now being able to just broadly across everything, do it well. And that's kind of like my target. And I set that unconsciously or retracted away from even thinking about, oh yeah, I want to keep that edge. But if I was to like extract that out, I could imagine myself till I was very old. Again, 60, you get to a point where it's okay. It's okay to really just tailor that down and focus on other things in your life. That's cool. I get that. But up to a very late point to go, yes, I want to try to keep myself to that standard, to that line. And I think that to me is what would define for me my edge at the very least, to say, oh, okay, I'm not dropping maybe below the median line, the 50% line. Like if the average is this, I want to be above the average in terms of maybe rowing or swimming, whatever, name whatever you think. But in the physical sense, I do want it to be like the case of, if Deuce rocks up and we want to play basketball, cool. We're playing basketball and you can be not just present, but you can actually engage into it. And I think that's my difference, if I had to say it. I don't want to be present in a physical sense. I want it to be, no matter what, it's like you can engage with the activity.
Yeah. So just when you were saying that, it just made me think that that's still pretty narrow, I would say, in the case of like, have you included things that you would talk about? So maybe like top 20% of flexibility, top 20% in, do you know what locomotion is?
Movement.
So yeah,
it's just the ability to move,
a fluidity of movement, I would say. So being able to, not necessarily like cartwheel to, full split or anything, but being able to do the basic sort of like, move from a Cossack squat into a, one-legged something or move into... And
you're right. So like in that terminology, no, I haven't. See, it's interesting. I haven't. And that's what makes me think of, I don't consider that an edge now. So it's like, okay, in the future, if it's still bad or worse, do I care that I've lost that edge, even though there wasn't an edge at all? That's where I got interesting about this topic, because let's say in that particular scenario about, say, the locomotion or the mobility for me, it's not a priority, and I wouldn't say it's an edge for me. So if something's holding me back, it's maybe mobility and my locomotive skills. And so in the future, if that gets worse, for me, I see it as, oh, that's okay. I never had that edge anyways.
Okay.
Where saying that out loud, I go, ooh, no, I would want it to be there, because that should form part of a broader aspect of, say, mobility or locomotion. Like if I had to put something, yes, I want to be able to hold say, what's that, like crab position when you go overhead and put your hands behind your back, whatever. A bridge. Like I want to hold a bridge for certain seconds. That could be introduced. But I've never looked at that today to go, oh, no, that's not important now. But it doesn't mean that it's not something that should become that's the edge you maintain.
Yeah. So I think this gets into, why would you want to keep them as well? And so we'll come back to circle around to two things. So what are your edges, do you think you'd say? What are the edges that, the whole context of that was being able to maintain yourself into your later years. So let's just say 60-year-old Juan. What do you think he would think were his edges and the things that he wish he had kept more?
Yeah, and so interestingly, we talked about... So interestingly, we talked about obviously intellect and physical. There's other stuff, that's fine. So I'm going to dive into one that's different, I guess. I would say characteristic, discipline. So one thing that I would want to keep my edge on, I would say today, is I'm disciplined. Like I've got and that's probably something that may be innate, maybe something that I've built up probably through gym and through the way that I eat in other places, whatever. But I would be like, if I had to have an edge, it would be a discipline to, when I'm 60, to be like, okay, if whatever I'm tackling at 60 years old, and I go, okay, well, I want to learn this or learn a new language and I make the time for it. Okay, I'm going to be disciplined and actually get this to go ahead, and when I say I'm going to do it, go and do it, kind of scenario. Now, would you say that that's something that you can call your edge? Would you term that under intellectual?
I think you can, but no. I'd say discipline is definitely something you could say is an edge.
Yeah.
You hear all these old army pilots or something who still have the same ritual routine in the morning and things like that, and that is what helps them get through the day or something.
Yeah. So I would say that plus energy flexibility, I guess I'd call it. Yeah, I'd probably say energy flexibility. So just the edge of being able to move about my energy to whatever is needed at any point. So if I need to be like hardcore using energy, whether it's being very, very focused on a work task or an exam or anything in that relation, cool, I'm ready to go. If I need to go on play sports, cool, I'm ready to go. If it's more like a relaxing, lay on the beach, good, I'm ready to let my energy go. That flexibility of energy, I would love to have that, keep that edge when I'm older, so that I've got the flexibility of like, yep, I can just dial in, get hardcore, super energetic with it, but I also have all the way to the other spectrum, and I can let go. I can't just chill out. I can't just lay on the beach and have that energy sort of expend upon that time.
Yeah. I think energy is a hard one because one of the things my dad's always told me getting into his later years, he's 63, 64ish now. Young man, daddy down. And he was saying like the biggest thing that he's noticed just, I guess, across of his life is just the energy loss that he experienced getting into his between, let's just say 40 to 60. That drop off was hard for him because he was definitely super energetic. He always was, think of the next scheme, the next plot. What can I do this?
Yeah.
How can I do that? And, trying to fill in that time, like super efficient, that sort of stuff. And like discipline, for example, that would be a hard one because what if your discipline is making you miserable? What if, you're super disciplined with yourself, but you don't have the energy to back it up. So you're forcing yourself to do all these things. Yeah. And it's just making you absolutely miserable. So it's kind of hard because, I don't want to speak for Future Car and what his wants are. It's kind of, I can imagine sort of what he would like and I'll keep those in mind, but I won't fixate on them to any particular degree.
Yeah.
I don't want to make promises for what he would want, I guess is getting what I'm getting at there.
Yep.
So then the other thing would be like, why do you want to keep them? So what's the actual reason for that? And so I was thinking it's more just the ability to start caring about what, 37-year-old Kyron, for example, wants. So keeping that in mind, but not getting too hard onto it, not speaking for him. So that's sort of what I boiled down this whole thing to: keeping your edge, thinking about what it is that maybe you in the future would want. And it's funny because when you do that, it's not a one-arm handstand. It's being able to walk around and play with my kids, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I was going to describe it so it's sometimes when we think about the great thing about being mortals and humans is that we get to think beyond just the immediate now, right? We're not animals. We can think a minute in front, a minute backwards, 10 minutes in front, 10 minutes backwards. But I think we don't conceptualize altogether that well what it might be like 10 years backwards, 10 years forwards, or beyond, 50 years forward, 60 years forward. And that's why I think sometimes just even discussing this where we go like, oh, how would you keep your edge at 60? You're kind of like, well, I guess I'd do the same thing I'm doing now. And it's like, no, that's not going to work.
Yeah, well, that's why I said 37. That's honestly is probably as far
out as you can really. Yeah. And I think for me, it's the whole getting to know. Sorry, why is it worth keeping your edge? I think it's more broadly, it's worth keeping your edge so that at any point in your life, you're able to operate in the way you want to operate. No, that would be kind of like one way I would say it. But because we struggled to see so far into the future, I would almost say as an advice to myself, like this is what I'm advising myself, is to find relevant people who are much older. And this is why it's always really helpful to talk to people who are older, right? 70, 80, 90 years old who, and like this guy I was listening to in the podcast, they're older. What are they doing, obviously, at those ages? And they might have been very similar to me younger to go, oh, okay, I can kind of understand myself through time, not just in the space that I exist in now, to go, oh, okay, if I want to be like that, there's actual changes that I might be able to implement now to help me keep that edge. So I think for me, the realization that I came to is whether it's physical, whether it's, to be joyous, to be curious or intellect, whatever it may be, I feel like it's going to be like a point in time, like a line in the sand. Like I'll get to 35 and I'll go, oh, okay, tomorrow and that's it. Now I'm like transferring completely. Like that's just not going to work. It's probably going to be physically, I'm probably just going to get injured at some point and be like, oh, no, I can't do this. Intellectually, I might just get absolutely burned out, like juggling 2 startups, a podcast, work, all this reading, and just blow up. So I think it's one of those things where it made me realize, do I want to keep my edge? Yes. How do I want to keep my edge? Then I've got to start today realizing what me as an individual through time looks like and starting to shift it slowly so that it's not just an impending, like absolute massive change, either externally causing it or just me having to force it for whatever reason.
So is there anything you think, so we're both almost 30, is there anything that at 35 you would say you're worse at now? So is there anything, my question I guess is there anything you're implementing right now to keep your edge? Is there anything that you think is necessary right at this, 30, almost 30-year-old?
Yeah, here's the other one. I think the one and beyond physical and intellect that we've been talking about. So for me, like the bracket of soul, but the volunteering, they're trying to give back. They're trying to go beyond just my immediate needs and wants. That I think I want to keep that edge. And by edge, I mean almost that soulful mental aspect of, whether you want to call it gratitude, whether you want to call it perspective, so that when I'm 35, I have that edge, if you want to look at it that way, that no matter what comes through, I've got a good perspective and good gratitude that I can it just bounces off. So yeah, it's what is it? Anti-fragile context from Naval? Was it Naval? No. Nassim Taleb. So almost that sort of level where you might have built up this gratitude and perspective. So things that come out your way almost just strengthen you. So that to me is like, okay, I want to keep that edge by 35.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. For me, I honestly don't think like this whole topic hasn't come up for me because I don't think there's anything I can reasonably see myself being worse at in 5 years, 6 years time. Like I just
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either.
I feel like I'd be better at everything, but
that's the weird thing, isn't it? That's the weird thing where if I had gone back, if you go back 5 years though, go back 5 years from today, was there something 5 years ago that you were better at? Look, could you say soccer? Could you say sprint running? Would there be something else? Or could you say like every single thing is better?
I'm struggling to think of anything that I'd care about that I'm better at.
Yeah,
that I was better at. So like, I was better at working and meetings and shit. But
you don't want to be that.
I didn't care about that. So
because for me, like a clear example that I wouldn't have thought 5 years ago, but it is true today, is that 5 years ago, hell of a better deadlifter than I am today.
Okay,
but it wasn't so much that I lost discipline for it or the energy to do it. No, I went through like all these injuries. So whether it was lifting injuries, whether it was sporting injuries, whatever it may be, all these things presented to today. Sure, I'm deadlifting. I'm getting better at it today in the micro space if you want to look at it within the year. But compared to 5 years ago, no way. I'm like so far off that sort of strength. And will I ever get there? Like maybe, maybe not. But I have that feeling that looking 5 years or to 35 years old, right now, I couldn't say, oh yeah, there's going to be. But for sure, there's going to be something that you're going to lose your edge on. And I think the whole point for me is, okay, learning to realize what level I've got to straddle, what level I've got to get to be able to be like, okay, yes, I can do this. I can push this hard, or where do I have to need to step back and go, okay, this is a bit broader. So this brings me to me a mortal moment.
Okay.
Unless you got any other
the only one I wanted to, so we touched on it before, but some of the things that they really recommend was being out in nature. So connecting with nature, exercising out in nature, having a sort of minimalist mindset in general. So not getting constrained by the tiny little things that can drag you down. Like Rana Roja. I have this, but if I had 20 of these, I'd maybe need to be like, oh, I need a box to keep all my 20 Rana Rojas. And then, continues on. So minimalist, low cardio in general, or so at least not like the pavement pounding running or shoulder destroying swimming or etc. Insert your long distance thing here. Stoicism was another thing. So these are all just general ways that they were saying that they kept their edge. The only thing,
sleeping as well.
Sleeping.
Sleeping.
Trying something new every week. I wasn't so sure on that one. I was like,
I like the monthly cycle. I do like the monthly cycle. Weekly, it's a bit too much. But monthly, I'm down with that.
Yeah. And then they were quite heavy on martial art. So is that something you'd ever see yourself getting into?
I think I'd see myself trying it.
Yeah.
At least trying it. We've talked about it, obviously, Jocko, etc. People, that do martial arts. Actually, there's a guy who I've met a couple of times now at the gym, CrossFit, that is also a BJJ. So I feel like I could see myself talking to him a bit more, maybe just trialing it out. But again, it's a balance of how many things can I actually do. So
yeah. Same for me. It's sort of like I'd maybe try it, but at the moment I'm struggling with the purpose of why I would need it. Yeah. That's the big one. I think that's the main stuff.
Okay. Well, my mere moral moment, because it's a little point I wanted to make sure I get across, because I don't know how much I talked about it, but for me is you'll find me at the boundary of reason and insanity, right? When it comes to some of these things. And this is where I need to put my head in, because especially when it comes to, I'll say broadly, there can be a lot of things. I can be default assertive, but I'll find myself in that border between, a reasonable thing and insanity. And there's for sure been some days where I'm like, running plus 2 gym sessions plus walking like 17 Ks. Perfect. That sounds good. That's pretty good. And then the next day, like my body's like wrecked. So that will not work moving into the future. Yeah. So for me, it's just
rest in peace.
Exactly. So I need to exactly. So I need to, and then I go out at night and jump in the air and land on my knees when we're in Japan.
Yeah.
So I've got to realize, I straddle the boundary between reason and insanity, and I've got to just make sure I tap myself over to keep my edge in the future.
Very good, very good. Mine is old Kyron. Why you so lame, bro? So I don't know. Just trying to imagine out in the future. What would old Kyron really care of? And I have a feeling he's just going to care about some stuff that current Kyron would just be like, mate, what is this?
What are you caring about
why
this?
Do you care about this stupid shit? Politics, for example. I could definitely see that. Got nothing else to do with my time. Like if I'm not exercising tons, maybe I get into politics. Mate,
I could never imagine. I could not imagine Kyron down as a fucking politician. No way.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen.
No. I mean, immortals.
I don't want to speak for old Kyron.
That's true. Well. Don't speak for old Kyron.
So research what's your task for next week? Next week, mere mortals. I've got mine. So on YouTube, once again there is no numbers. Or this is also on. It's a podcast as well, so you can find it on the audios. But it's How to Get Rich by my man Naval Ravikant. It's long, so it's like 3.
I might have listened to that one.
Yeah, 3 or 4
Is it an older
hours.
one?
It's pretty old, yeah. So, lots of wisdom in that one. I think the episode would be called Wisdom, if I had to guess.
Wisdom.
I think Naval's got some good wisdom. So How to Get Rich by Naval. Check it out if you want to know what we'll be talking about next week.
Good. Very good. All right, man, Mortals, well, that's all for keeping your edge today. Of course, if you'd like to leave a comment on how do you keep your edge.
I know how
Are you a... How they can? How can they?
Watch some Immortals daily. There's daily stuff. There is daily stuff coming out on the YouTube. That is how you keep your edge. Don't lose a day.
How do we keep our edge to make sure that we keep the podcast going? We do it daily.
It
comes out daily. We keep our edge. Well, but you can see it. I think if you kept doing, say, a book review every 2 weeks, you could even ease it back. You could ease it back to like a month. You would keep that edge. Like I think you would keep that skill. It would probably slowly improve. It wouldn't deteriorate. It might level out to a point, but it wouldn't deteriorate. You'd keep your edge.
Yeah, starting the new series of book reviews, which are a bit more focused, obviously less umming and erring and less, it's more thought going into each sentence. I'm
more professional book review.
More professional, but I'm also seeing, call it like entertainment wise, this can be upped. I can definitely do better. Especially the Spanish ones, man. I've noticed myself, particularly with the Spanish, this is just random side topic, but I've noticed myself when I get into the Spanish, because it takes so longer to do, because I really need to think about it, and because I make way more mistakes in Spanish, like I'll insert the wrong feminine end, or I'll want to say dificultad instead of difícil, which is, you'll understand if you're listening to it, but if you're listening to it in Spanish, you're probably like, what is this retard talking about?
What is this?
Why would you say that wrong word there? So I've noticed like I have to record way longer, And so my voice becomes way more monotone because I'm getting in my head
Oh,
and really
gotcha,
thinking
right,
about it.
yep.
So, and I've noticed like I can switch up my tone of voice to make it more exciting in my normal speaking,
English voice.
yeah, English, telling a story.
Or in Spanish, but
changing.
once you start getting to like doing it for a while.
Yeah. Once
You
you're
start
20 minutes
sounding
deep and
the
you're
same.
not even halfway, it's like, oh, geez, man. That's not even a thought that goes through my head. It just naturally occurs. So,
Yeah.
Anyway,
There you
lots
go.
of improvements
Yeah.
to be made. The mere mortals have not reached their edge, people. We are going to the moon.
We're going to the moon. We're
going to
creating
the
a new
moon.
coin.
Creating to a new mere mortal coin.
I actually had a quick look at how to do that. It looked safe. It looked hard. I was like, man, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Anyways, folks, that's pretty much it. Make sure you catch the next installment of the Mere Mortal. But for now, that is all. One out.
Going out.
Shoo!